So in this video, I want to talk about the little internal voice that keeps constantly saying, you aren't good enough. If you're anything like me, this is a constant voice, constant reminder that for some reason always shows up unprovoked, uninvited, and feels like it is incredibly limiting because anytime you feel hopeful or motivated to do something, it feels like it just springs up and then it just destroys that. And I think a big source of it is from social media. I think a big source of this is just anytime you go onto social media, you see constant exposure of people who are better than you in any kind of way or any endeavor that you can possibly think of. And the really shitty thing about it is all these social media things know what you like the most. You know, if you're into fitness and the algorithm or something is showing you fitness stuff because that's what you're into, well, they're going to show you the top 1% of 1% of anything fitness related. So you're going to see people who've got this progress, whether it is influence between actually working out as a natty or taking steroids or whatever, or just these feats that have taken astronomical time, but you're still thrown into other people's success constantly. And obviously that relates to just the survivor bias of just seeing only the cream of the crop in every aspect. But even if you're into like sports or any kind of hobby, right, there's a good side of it to be inspired by seeing what you're seeing or what you're exposed to. But at the same time, it's also a detrimental thing because it's just showing you of like what you're not. It's like a reminder to say like, you know, no matter where you are, this is better than you, or these people have made it further. And I know some people, I know a lot of people see it differently. Like they might see it as a way to get inspired, but I think it's because it's just constantly thrown in front of you unprovoked. It's like even if you're not looking for it or you're not wanting to see it, it's still forced in front of you. And it could be postings, it could be advertisements, you know, whatever it ends up being, right? You just feel bombarded, or at least I do. So obviously this is a huge indication to limit your social media usage, or just eliminate it almost completely as much as you can. You know, that's up to you. But I don't know, I feel like that, again, coming back to that internal voice of just feeling like you're not good enough, it stems a lot from the social comparison. And that's a big thing that I think people back in the day, when you didn't have that accessibility to just see into people's lives and to see everything on a global scale, like you didn't see that exposure of just how insignificant you truly are in so many different ways. And even if you were like the best at, you know, from putting a lot of time into what you were doing, into a project or a hobby or a sport in your area back in the day, like 20 years ago, you felt good about it and you felt accomplished because you knew that your hard work was more or less justified. But even if you do that same amount of work nowadays, you log into social media, whether you want to see it or not, your hobbies and your interests or whatever you're into will be thrown in front of you with people who have gone so much further and have done so much more. And again, I don't know, guys, call me crazy, but I don't really see that as like inspiring. I think when I want to see something inspiring or more creative, there's a time and place for that, but it doesn't, and it's too consistently obnoxious to feel that way. And you know, you're always going to have that ladder system too of people looking at your progress and seeing like that's where I would want to be too. You know, that's always looking at like your neighbor and saying like, you know, at least, you know, you're there. But I'm talking about when you've put in the work yourself, right? And then when you're at a place where you should feel accomplished or you should feel proud about what you've done, but you still get that voice being like, you know, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. No matter where you get to, it's not good enough. You're not good enough. And it's just become so toxic. It's become so... it's been such a negative impact on my mental health personally, and you know, and this has caused me to just remove social media and that idea of social comparison and all that just out of my life, you know, out of sight, out of mind, and you can kind of forget about it. But at the same time, it still somehow creeps up. You can like mitigate certain things in a way, but yeah, it's something I feel like we can't escape from no matter what. Maybe it's some kind of, it's like an evolutionary thing, or it's going to be, part of the growth process, to always want to be pushing further, farther, faster, stronger, in all those ways. But I feel like that is a hurdle we face nowadays in terms of the mental health reasons that impact us negatively from this. So I know I feel like I've talked to a lot of people about this too, and they've expressed the same kind of concerns. And at some point you want to feel acceptance. You want to feel like what you're doing is good enough, and the work that you put in, that you want to feel proud. But the weird thing is I don't even know if I can tell you the last time I've felt like I've genuinely felt proud about something, because even if it's for a split of a second that I do about hard work or an accomplishment that I've done, immediately I'm just reminded, I'm bombarded about how much further I have to go, and then it just completely sucks any enjoyment out of that satisfaction. So, or it's like you'll hear stories, right? It's not even just not even just the social media, but you'll just, you'll run into people doing this or that, or, at certain points of their life, and, knowing that we all have a different road that we're taking, and then we all have different things that limit us in some ways. But, and there's so much to say on this. And I just don't know how long I want this video to be, because I could go on about this for so long. But when it comes to that voice of just being constantly reminded that you feel like you're not good enough, obviously the productive and the way to counter that is to tell yourself that yes, you are enough, that yes, who you are right now, what you're doing, as long as you're trying to benefit yourself in some way, I would say like in a healthy way, to promote yourself, to have like a better future in some way, then you're doing okay. But it's just tough. It's just really tough sometimes. And this hyper-connected future, or this hyper-connected reality that we have now, just feels like it makes it astronomically harder to have to deal with all this social comparison and that. And another interesting point about this is when you are exposed to only these high velocity lifestyles of doing all these grand things that aren't really realistic, right? They've only got these highlight reels of what they're doing, whether it's traveling or, just these absolute luxury 1%, 1% of 1% lifestyles that are constantly thrown in front of you. When you get hyper exposed to always seeing that, or other people seeing that too, and then they see your reality, and then they're making that comparison, it's almost like when they reject you, and this is kind of maybe me, talking about the whole like dating life and all that kind of stuff, of how there's these standards now that are just impossible to reach in terms of just trying to find companionship. But it's when people see these lifestyles that aren't real, or that don't really exist because they're just promoted as these things that what am I even trying to say? Only these highlight reels of these perfect lives, especially with people who just have endless cash, it makes our normal lives feel like that's not good enough, or that's, some kind of mundane thing. And then when you do get rejected in some way, because you can't provide that with a partner, which is a very superficial thing, then there's another reason as to why you constantly feel like you're not good enough. And a lot of people would say, well, if you're dating someone, or if you're meeting people who feel that way, that you aren't good enough with just some kind of average life, that you don't want to be around them in the first place. And that is true. But at the same time, if you constantly have that over and over again, and you can't make grounds with anyone, it's it's kind of like, well, then what are we doing? Like, what is, like, where is society going to get to if everyone's just looking for this greener grass of this lifestyle that doesn't really exist? It's like this fantasy that we're all hoping for, this Hollywood, you know, this Hollywood ending where we sail into the sunset on the big yacht with this grand lifestyle where we got tons of followers and everyone loves us and this and that and lovey-dovey perfect lifestyle. And if you're always hoping for that and everyone's got that as their ideal lifestyle and that's the only thing they're going to go for, then you can see how that's going to be an issue. And then we have this thing where I wouldn't advocate ever to settle, but if your mantra was always like, don't settle, and you've got your eyes on this insane lifestyle that's so hard to actually attain or to try to find someone who's going to be there. It's like if I said to you, okay, that's what you want as a lifestyle, but the odds of you finding that is only like 2%, you could go through your whole life never ever, like you would never then compromise to actually find something that you would be then okay with. Or at what point do you dial that back and say, hey, maybe my values are a little superficial, maybe I should think twice about what I'm choosing to value, and maybe I should then reevaluate accordingly, right? To try to get more, to try to find more acceptance within myself and also other people. So yeah, I feel like that's a big factor too about why we feel like we're never good enough, or why other people aren't good enough. But maybe I'll leave it there. I don't know, this was just on my mind, so I feel like I want to just bring this up. Maybe we can have a conversation about this in the comments and relate to this in some way. It's nice to know that other people feel the same way in regards to what they're also going through. And yeah, that's all we got for today. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.